Hello, you're back with a single malt review, and today we're returning to familiar territory with another Glenfarclas.
Back once again, the old Glen of Farclas. It's almost like we might be fans of the whiskey, and I hope we'll be fans of this one. What's this one? That's the 15.
It is a 15. Filling in all his gaps in what we've tried, slowly but surely, and I've copied down notes from we've done so many episodes now over more than 2 years, but I had to go back and actually look up some numbers. And yeah, we've done, how many is that? Blimey, yep, that is 6 Glenfarclases. Cool. And yeah, all consistently rated very high, all the ones with age statements at least. There are a couple of the boutique, sort of blended no age statement Glenfarclases.
Well, there was those two, conspicuously Passion and Springs, those ones for the German market only. They were maybe not as not such hot bangers as the rest of them, but I think they were very much their own thing. So
but
we won't
always
take
age
those as
statement ones.
canon.
That's the 1989 Family Cask, 105, 12, 18. All of these have rated around the 85 mark. To date, my favourite has been the 12-year-old. That's one I scored highest. Whereas, Tim, I see your highest scoring was the 18.
There we have it. So, this one, the 15, conspicuously 3% stronger than the others, and that's apparently a point of tradition.
46, in line with many of the more.
Apparently, one of the grants passed, and there are a long line of them these days, still in control and ownership of the distillery, which is always heartening to see. It was their opinion that the 15 especially was at its best at 46. So far be it from anyone else to contradict them. This one is you get 3% extra if you buy the 15, so that's good. And the 15 for me, although this could be I could be well out of date now, the 15 for me was always sort of where Glenfarclas became a really conspicuously sherry matured whiskey.
Yeah.
Of course, as far as I know, Glenfarclas is still a exclusively sherry matured whiskey, although they could well have changed that in the recent years. I haven't done a fresh bit of research, but certainly their whiskies, some are more sherried than others in terms of their character. The 12-year-old especially is, you could almost say that was a bourbon whiskey if you didn't know, because I think the sherry that it comes out of is so well worn that the characteristics that you get are really quite quiet in terms of their sherry influence. 15 is where that really starts to change, and you get a really significantly sherry matured product out of it. Although we did taste the 18, and that I felt was quite a not a bland whiskey, but it certainly wasn't conspicuously sherry charactered to it. But anyway, this is the 15, so we'll focus on this.
Something I've asked before, I'm sure, but I feel the need to ask again because you're often more in-depth when it comes to the details and even trivia. So we have here a Highland single malt Scotch whisky from Glenfarclas Distillery, Speyside, Scotland. Which is it officially? What region of whisky are we diving into?
As far as I was aware, Glenfarclas is a Speyside whisky.
That's what I would have thought too, on account of being in Speyside.
Highland, all of the entirety of Speyside is geographically in the Highlands. So I guess you can take your pick, really. They may be coming to the conclusion, as a great many people are, that there's bugger all difference between Speyside and Highland. How close you are to the Jolly River.
Every two regions have a border after all. So.
Yeah, is not... I mean, they make one of the most characteristically Speyside whiskies is made on the Isle of Arran. So... You know, you take it or leave it, I suppose. I suspect they may be leaving it in this case. But yeah, as far as I know, unless I'm totally going bonkers on this one, it's a Speyside whiskey geographically. But yeah, all Speysides are Highlands. It's one of those things.
Before we get properly stuck in, I'm going to take a moment to praise once again the recent and I think wonderful advent of the 200ml bottle. This is such a good size for this sort of thing. There's no one needs to buy a huge bottle every time I want to do one of these videos on the internet. This is a great way to have a decent amount you can enjoy for a while. It's not just like a little one-shot throwaway mini, but it's not another big stonking great 700ml to 1 litre monstrosity, taking up even more shelf space and emptying your wallet even further.
They're certainly great for tasting. And yeah, I think that is a bottle size that would certainly find a niche. Because those, the little I always think of them as, you know, hotel minibar bottles, aeroplane bottles, whatever. They really are just a bit. They are just a bit small. It's hard not to look at them and be a bit disappointed, especially if you like the whiskey inside, because
you
then
cannot revisit it. It's gone.
then you're kind of buggered once you've had a glass of that one, because they have tantamount to about 2 glasses in them on a good day. This one, you know, that's getting close enough to a third of a bottle. So. Yeah, a good size, I think, if you want to taste broadly.
Economy, but also size, and you can revisit it, you can share it around.
But
that tangent aside.
But the whiskey.
Oh, that smells lovely. That is evoking immediately images of hot, buttered Jamaican-style ginger loaf.
It is very buttery.
And very gingery, too. It's excellent. It's one of my favourite winter breakfasts is some hot ginger
spicy.
bread.
It's quite raisiny as well, or sort of, when you say loaf, I don't know what Jamaican loaf is necessarily, but it tastes a lot like sultana bread to me.
Yeah, it's just the English favourite, rather spicy, ginger loaf.
Yeah, very sort of macerated, stewed fruits going on in this one, and quite a heat in the nose. It's a whiskey that's very much alive, and that's
warming before it's even on the palate. So that's
probably due to the 46%. Yeah, very round, very warm, very buttery. It's a nose that you can really only get without chill filtration. I think
it's a good, vibrant gold colour.
Yes, it is. Not hugely dark.
No.
So
Getting there, though. It's showing its age.
No mega fresh sherry in there, but I'd say we'll find quite enough sherry. Right, let's see.
Full 46% strength. Oh, that sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
The very first sip, it feels mild and cooling. Then immediately, as soon as you begin to swallow, there's a wave of spices and
It is
and
a
heat.
hot number. Yeah, a whole lot of heat.
It's explosive.
That is a keen spirit there. Wow, I don't know if it's just that extra 3% bringing that, but that's a hell of a thing. There is not an insignificant burn.
It might be, but maybe this one's right on the tipping point between the youthful whiskies like the Glenfarclas 12 we had before, and the slightly more softer, more matured like the 18s and others which we've tried previously. This may be just that sweet spot where we've got all those factors kind of converging into a whiskey singularity.
That makes it a little bit difficult because that sort of gives you only a window to taste it in before that warm fire really kind of picks up and shuttles everything away. But
it explodes into like a hot mouthful of freshly stewed fruits. This
Definitely,
is we're in the middle of winter here in New Zealand still as we record this, and this is a scrumptious, desserty winter whiskey.
Now, speaking of pointless whiskey regions, it's a very Highland style. Lots and lots of stewed, cooked fruits. Still heaps and heaps of raisins, sort of boiled cakey raisins, and just on the end, after that burn subsides, there's quite a lot of old oak, or as it's described sometimes when people are tasting wine, they'll call it wet wood, which is kind of a weird descriptor unless you spend a lot of time around wood. But there is kind of a smell to soaked wood, I suppose you'd call it. But it's only ever you only ever smell it when it comes to wood, unless you're a fan of eating wet wood, which we're not anyway. But it comes up as a tasting note often in both wines and whiskies. This is a wet wood, and it's an aromatic you get right at the back of the throat. And you normally have to do a bit of recirculation. When I say recirculation, that's when you open your mouth but close your lips, and then gently blow air through your nose. And that sort of picks up just the sort of vapours that are hanging around in the back of the throat and blows them back over the sort of olfactory senses, and you'll get some subtext of what you're drinking there in a ways that other normal sort of methods of tasting won't tell you. And that's where this wet wood is really coming into play.
And what Tim's just described is something I was sensing early on but couldn't quite put it into words. A character which is just very, very slightly sharp, very slightly sour, a sort of it brings on hints of an old backyard after it's been raining. Whereas is, as we say, wet wood, timber, actual fresh cut timber that's been soaking in water for a good long time, and just always little. It's not sweet, it's not like properly savoury. It's something a little bit different. It's not overpowering, it's just a hint there on the
finish.
finish.
Almost there's quite a sweet and sour whiskey. And that sounds like an odd way to describe whiskey. It's more like a sauce from McDonald's. But sweet and sour is something that crops up, and it only ever does it in sherry matured whiskies. And it's something I can speculate that it's some interplay between the sort of fruitier, more tannic sherried wood, the age of the wood, which is normally going to be much, much older in a sherry cask, because they make those things work as long as they possibly can, because they're so much more expensive, and just a little bit of the sulfur from the treatment that those sherry casks get. Almost all of them are sort of biologically cleansed to make sure there's no bacteria in there. With a sulfur, either by sort of lowering in this little sulfur candle, they call it, and burning it in there so the vapour coats the inside, or various other sulfur treatments. And it's, depending on how sort of, I suppose you'd say, sympathetically it was performed, the sulfur flavour can make quite an impression on the wood. Some whiskies are famous for it.
Edradour to be uniquely sulphurous.
Edradour and Ben Nevis used to be an absolute standout for really sort of rubbery, sulphury, sherry matured whiskey. I think less so these days, because the cask treatment is a bit more. It's far more sympathetic towards making whiskey than it used to be. It's no longer just a byproduct of the sherry industry. A lot of sherry barrels are made, seasoned, and the sherry is decanted off just in the pursuit of making sherry matured whiskey. No one even cares what happens to that sherry these days, but it gets sold really cheap. So that's how things have changed there. But I think I can taste quite a bit of that sulphur there, especially with that addition of water. For those who don't know what sulphur really manifests as, it's like a matchstick quality. It's probably the closest you can come. You know, sniffing a box of matches, or crushing up a match head, smelling that. That's a good one for sulphury tastes.
I'm finding water is exacerbating the sweetness and slightly downplaying that sulphur.
I think on the palate that's the case. That's really, really sweetened up the palate. It's very, very fresh and fruity now. Not so much as sweet and sour as it began. It's quite a transformation.
What a little bitterness, but the kind of bitterness you get from biting into an orange.
That'll be the tannin manifesting from the old wood there. It's clouding out really nicely as well, so that's a good display of its unchill filtered chops there. That is for a whiskey that's 15 years old, that almost to me tastes more sort of youthful and vibrant than the 12. The 12 I thought was quite, as much as I enjoyed it, it was quite buttoned down as whiskey goes. This one is sort of a bit more, I think a lot more wild. This is very wild whiskey. It's quite loud, it's quite peppy, and it's very, very lifted in the flavours that it brings. It's a little more, it's not the flavour of conventional whiskey at all. Not at all, which makes it just a little bit difficult to score, because it doesn't have very many stablemates in this particular thing, and it's quite different to other Glenfarclas whiskey as well. Glenfarclas whiskey is normally a lot quieter than this one. This is a bit of a firebrand as whiskies go. But it's one I rather enjoy. That one I'll give just 1 point extra. I'll give that one an 89. It is not far away better than the 12, and it's very, very different to the 12, but I think based on its combined merits, it does inch it out by 1 point for me. What do you think?
Well, I have to say, this is my favourite Glenfarclas to date. Looking back on notes from the previous episodes, we've been reviewing Glenfarclas for nigh on 2 years now. And in that time, obviously how I'm going to score things has changed as my preferences and my experience in reviewing whiskey has improved too. But this one rates a 91 from me. It's I think it has hit that ideal point between the youthful vitality and the sort of mature saturnine solemnity which you get from an older whiskey. It is right on the crux. It is doing the best of all those various worlds, which Glenfarclas already do really well anyway. It is a standout of their range to date. So yeah, 91 for me, which puts it even higher. My previous favourite was the 12, which I scored an 88.
Wow, there you have it. It's really pretty strong stuff, I think, and a very, very different Glenfarclas. It's one that you stand quite out from the rest of the range, and I suppose they do too because of this different strength and different treatment. It's really much of a sort of an interlude between the quite formulaic, I suppose you'd call the 12 and the 10, although we haven't looked at the 10, and they've even got a 7 now. God knows
Really?
why.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
seven.
new to me.
Just I don't know why they've got a 7, whether it's a duty-free thing that broke out of the airport or what's going on, but it's... If I see one really cheap, I might pick it up.
I guess youthful whiskey were had a few standouts in recent years, so
Who
maybe
knows?
yeah,
Who knows? I'm a bit dubious about 7-year-old Glenfarclas actually, but I mean, I'd be fascinated to try. I'm checking at Whiskey Law and see if they've got one open. That's probably the best way of having a look. But no, this one certainly good. Both if you like Glenfarclas, if you like dynamic sherry matured whiskey, and if you just like quite a wet and wild whiskey. This one's probably the one for you.
If you are dubious about buying whiskey based on a recommendation of two guys on the internet, it comes in a handy dandy 200ml as well.
And it'll happily come in a 1 litre if you're at the airport as well, so you can take your pick.
The options are open.
Alrighty, well, that's one more on the Glenfarclas shelf done. We're almost... well, this is where things get expensive if we want to do the whole library, but we'll see.
We've both tried the Glenfarclas 40 before. We don't have any anymore, sadly.
We have.
It's long gone, but...
We've got one very sad empty bottle, and that's all that remains. Very difficult whiskey to get hold of now, but never mind. You never know. Things can happen in the future. Like another whiskey review, which we'll get to work on straight away. Sandra.